There are some questions that don't echo. They detonate. The sun had barely nudged its way through the tall eucalyptus trees outside Elon Musk's Bel Air mansion. The morning light cast a golden sheen over the sleek kitchen, its futuristic design standing in silent competition with the birds chirping outside. Inside, the coffee machine hissed like a miniature rocket preparing for liftoff. Elon, in his wrinkled SpaceX hoodie and mismatched socks, stood over a plate of scrambled eggs, which he hadn't cooked but took credit for anyway. He was scrolling through emails on his phone, half reading, half calculating orbital trajectories in his head, when his 10-year-old daughter, Ava, broke the quiet. "Daddy," she began, her voice soft but clear as crystal. "Why do you love rockets more than you loved Mommy?" The spoon clattered against Elon's coffee cup. Ava didn't say it like a child asking a silly question. She said it like someone who had thought about it for a long time, turning it over in her mind like a stone with something written underneath. She was sitting across from him in her unicorn pajamas, one knee pulled up to her chest, a slice of toast untouched on her plate. Her brown curls were still messy from sleep, and her hazel eyes, Justine's eyes, looked straight into his with terrifying precision. Elon blinked. 1,000 retorts queued in his head. Some funny, some evasive, a few even clever, but none fit. "Wow," he said finally, his voice trying to find its footing. "You really opened with a booster launch, huh?" Ava giggled slightly, but didn't let her gaze fall. "Well," Elon looked around, as if the walls might offer him a cue card. They didn't. "I mean, he started buying time. I do love rockets. That's fair. But I don't think I love them more than your mom. That's complicated." Ava took a sip of her juice and waited. She had the patience of someone who already knew the answer but wanted to see if you'd admit it. There it was, the unbearable stillness of truth waiting to be addressed. Elon leaned back in his chair and sighed, scratching the back of his neck. "You know," he said, "there's a reason most people become astronauts and not philosophers. Space is easier to explain than feelings." Ava arched an eyebrow, a skill she had clearly inherited from him. "So, you're saying feelings are harder than Mars?" "Much harder," he nodded solemnly. "Mars doesn't cry when you forget its birthday." She giggled again, and for a brief second, Elon felt the tension lift, but only slightly. He looked at her and realized she was growing up faster than he'd ever planned for. That question, it wasn't random. It was curated, a reflection of thoughts he hadn't been present enough to catch brewing. He took a bite of toast, mostly to avoid speaking. It tasted like guilt. "You remember Mommy, right?" he asked. "Of course," Ava said. "She smelled like cinnamon." That made Elon smile. She did. She was amazing, fierce, brilliant, also a little scary when she was mad. "I remember that too," Ava said. "Especially the time you brought a drone to our picnic and flew it into the watermelon." Elon snorted. That drone had one job: surveillance, not fruit sabotage. They shared a laugh, but the air remained heavy. Elon leaned forward, elbows on the table, and looked at her more seriously. "You're not wrong to ask what you asked," he said. "It's just, I didn't always get the balance right. I chased ideas so hard, sometimes I forgot there were people chasing me. Your mom deserved more, and maybe you do too." Ava tilted her head. "Do you think if you'd loved her more, you wouldn't have built so many rockets?" That one hit like a Sidewinder missile. Elon looked down at his coffee. It was suddenly too bitter. "I think," he said slowly, "if I'd loved myself more, I might have known how to show love to her better. And to you." The kitchen fell silent. Even the refrigerator seemed to hold its breath. Then Ava said something unexpected. "Daddy." "Yeah." "I don't want you to stop building rockets." Elon looked up, surprised. "They make you happy," she said. "And when you're happy, you tell better jokes." He laughed out loud. Relief flooded his system like an emergency valve opening. "Well, that's the most honest performance review I've had all month." "But," she added, leveling her tone again, "you could build a rocket that doesn't take you so far away. Like, maybe just to the moon and back before dinner?" Elon tapped his chin thoughtfully. "A moon commute model. Low orbit. Home by bedtime. I'll call it Luna Express. She beamed. He stood, walked over, and ruffled her hair. I love you, you know that. I know, she said, but sometimes it feels like you love Mars more. There it was again, that detonation. Not as explosive this time, but still deep. Still seismic. I'll work on that, he said quietly. Starting today. Ava nodded, pleased. She took another bite of toast. Elon refilled his coffee, letting her words swirl around in the cup like cream. He had faced financial collapses, spacecraft explosions, international scandals, and internet mobs. But nothing had ever pierced him the way his daughter's question had. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this wasn't just about her or Justine or rockets. It was about something older. A question he'd been dodging his whole life without even realizing it. He glanced at Ava, who was now happily humming while building a syrup fortress around her pancakes. Maybe the real countdown wasn't to Mars. Maybe it had just started right here, over breakfast. The rest of the morning unfolded like a movie without sound. Elon noticed it in the way Ava pushed her scrambled eggs around with her fork, the way she didn't hum her usual silly songs, the way she stared out the window longer than usual, as if the trees outside had secrets she was trying to decode. He watched her in the rearview mirror on the drive to school, but instead of asking about asteroids or what would happen if a horse rode a rocket, a genuine question from last month, she simply sat with her backpack in her lap, and her thoughts even heavier than it. When she got out of the car, she turned and gave a tiny wave, not sad, not angry, just distant. Elon hated that wave. That night, he canceled a product strategy meeting at Tesla, something that, in his world, was considered a small revolution. He sat alone in the living room, eating a granola bar with all the melancholy of a man chewing cardboard, staring at the fireplace as if it might offer him parenting advice. How you fix something you didn't realize you broke, he murmured aloud. Marvin, the AI assistant embedded in the house system, chirped to life. Statistically speaking, most human males do not recognize damage until approximately 67% of emotional trust has eroded. Would you like to schedule a repair? Elon blinked. Marvin, not helpful. Understood. Switching to empathetic mode. You're trying and that matters. He chuckled despite himself. Still not helpful, but thanks for the effort. He glanced at a photo on the mantel. Ava, age 4, sitting in a prototype Starship cockpit with peanut butter on her cheek, wearing an oversized SpaceX helmet. She'd always been curious, always observing, always trying to understand things bigger than herself. And now, somehow, she was trying to understand him. The next morning, Elon stood outside her bedroom door in a t-shirt that said, "Let's go to Mars," right after pancakes, and knocked. "Come in," came the quiet voice. He peeked in. "What if we skip school today?" Ava looked up from tying her shoes. "Why?" "Because I need a co-pilot. And because pancakes." She considered it, then shrugged. "Okay, but I'm choosing the music." An hour later, they were in a matte black Tesla Cybertruck cruising down the Pacific Coast Highway with ABBA blasting from the speakers. Ava danced in her seat, hair whipping in the breeze from the open window. Elon tapped the wheel in rhythm, pretending not to be overly relieved that she was smiling again. They stopped at a quiet beach where the sand was still cool, and the only sounds were waves and the occasional seagull with questionable pitch. They walked barefoot along the shore, Elon's jeans rolled up to his calves, Ava carrying a bucket she insisted was for science. "Do you think the ocean feels lonely?" she asked, crouching to collect a peculiar shell. Elon looked out over the water. "No, I think it feels full, but not crowded." She nodded as if that made perfect sense. "Like you." He blinked. "Like me." "You're always full of ideas," she said, examining the shell. "But sometimes I think you're still alone." The wind carried that sentence far before Elon could reply. They built a sandcastle after that. Well, Ava built it. Elon tried to improve its structural integrity with a mini trench system and failed miserably. She laughed when his tower collapsed for the third time and said, "Maybe don't overthink it. It's just sand, Daddy." That stuck with him. Afterward, they drove into town and stopped by a small bookstore cafe that smelled like cinnamon and forgotten dreams. Elon bought her a hot chocolate with too many marshmallows and himself a tea he didn't really want but figured made him look more grounded. They sat by the window watching people pass. A man argued with a parking meter. A woman walked 5 dogs that clearly didn't get along. An old couple held hands and walked at a speed that made snails seem ambitious. Ava sipped her drink and said, "Do you think people stop loving each other because they forget how to talk?" Elon stared at her. "Where did that come from?" "I read it in a book," she said. "But also, Mommy and you used to talk a lot, and then you didn't." He sighed, stirred his tea. "Yeah, we both got busy, and tired, and proud, and stubborn. Sometimes when two smart people get hurt, they act like they don't care, just to win. But no one really wins." Ava tilted her head. "I don't like that game." "Neither do I," he admitted. They sat in silence for a moment. Not the kind that suffocates, but the kind that allows breathing room. Then, as if shifting gears, Ava pointed to a bulletin board behind the counter. "Look, they're doing a daddy-daughter trivia night this Friday." Elon squinted. "Science trivia?" "Nope. General knowledge. Random stuff." He groaned. "I'm doomed." She grinned. "You'll be fine. Just don't overthink it. It's just trivia, Daddy." That really stuck. On the drive home, Ava dozed off with her head resting against the window. Elon turned the volume down, the music barely a whisper. He looked over at her peaceful face and felt something in his chest shift. He'd spent years trying to decode the universe, break the rules of physics, solve the unsolvable. But somehow, the most difficult equation of all was sitting in his passenger seat, wearing marshmallow on her sleeve. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like escaping gravity. He felt tethered, in the best way. Elon didn't cry when Ava was born. He wanted to. His throat closed, his eyes stung, and for a moment, he felt something bigger than awe, something beyond language, but the tears just wouldn't come. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was disbelief that anything so perfect could exist. Or maybe it was because just 2 hours earlier, he had been on a video call approving final trajectory models for Falcon 9 launch. The world had not paused for the birth of his daughter. But Elon Musk had. Now, years later, driving Ava home from their beach day, he found himself transported, flung back in time by the quiet rise and fall of her breath as she napped in the passenger seat. He remembered the smell of antiseptic and stale coffee in the hospital, the bright, flat light overhead that made everyone look like they hadn't slept in days, probably because they hadn't. He remembered Justine gripping his hand like a vice and screaming words that, though not printable, could have easily powered a Tesla battery. "I think you fractured my carpal tunnel," he had whispered in a voice 2 octaves higher than normal. "Focus, Elon," she'd roared. "This is not a product launch." He wanted to help. He really did. But the delivery room was chaos incarnate. The monitors beeped like rogue satellites, nurses moved like commandos in Crocs, and someone handed Elon a pair of latex gloves with all the ceremony of handing someone the nuclear codes. And then came Ava. Tiny, wrinkly, unimpressed. She didn't cry right away. She blinked up at him as if to say, "This is the guy." And for once in his life, Elon had no pitch, no answer, no plan. Just overwhelming love. Raw, unfiltered, and a paralyzing sense that he wasn't ready for any of it. Back at home, during those first sleepless weeks, he approached fatherhood like a science project. He installed a baby monitor system with biometric tracking, heat sensors, and a secondary AI named Nanobot that could detect irregular burps and diaper emergencies with 87% accuracy. But no algorithm prepared him for the first diaper. There he was, Elon Musk, titan of technology, knelt before a changing table holding a diaper like it was a quantum puzzle. Ava gurgled at him, amused. The baby wipes kept sticking together. The diaper tabs kept folding onto themselves. And the diaper itself had some kind of inverted origami design that made no logical sense. So naturally, he grabbed a calculator. "Okay," he muttered. "If I fold this side over with a slight torque angle of approximately..." "Wait, no, baby, stop moving." Okay, if I secure the quadrant here. Justine walked in mid-diaper equation. Elon, she said, half laughing, half concerned, are you doing math to change a diaper? I'm optimizing the structural tension of the containment wrap, he replied defensively. She took the diaper from his hand, flipped it effortlessly into place, fastened the tabs with ninja precision, and lifted Ava with one arm. Done. Elon blinked. How did you? Instinct, she said. Also YouTube. But for all his initial blunders, Elon threw himself into being a father the same way he did with rockets and revolutions. He read bedtime stories in robot voices. He built a baby bouncer that simulated lunar gravity. He designed a stroller with solar panels, Bluetooth speakers, and a snack dispenser that broke within 48 hours. He tried. And Ava? She responded with giggles, with sleepy cuddles, with wide-eyed wonder that turned even the smallest things, shadows, wind, bananas, into miracles. But always in the background there were launches, meetings, deadlines that refused to care that he had a daughter now. And slowly he noticed a pattern. Ava would reach for him, and sometimes he wouldn't be there to catch her. Back in the present, Elon pulled the Cybertruck into the driveway and parked. Ava stirred beside him, yawning as she blinked away sleep. Home, she murmured. Yeah, he said softly. They walked into the house, and Elon paused by the living room shelf. He picked up a small, dusty model of the Mars surface rover he had designed years ago. Ava had once chewed on one of its antennae as a teething toy. Muffs, the red planet, his obsession, his legacy. But in that moment, it felt distant. Less important than the tiny footprints Ava used to leave on his chest after crawling over him in the middle of the night. He turned to her. Hey, do you want to see something funny? Ava raised an eyebrow. Depends. Is it one of your old dancing robot videos again? Worse, he grinned. It's my diaper-changing logbook. She followed him to the office, where he opened a drawer and pulled out a small, leather-bound journal. You log diaper changes, she laughed. Of course. I was tracking absorbency patterns and sleep disruption metrics. See here, he flipped to a page, October 15th, 3:12 a.m., diaper explosion event, category 5. Suspected correlation with pureed carrots. Ava collapsed in giggles. They sat there together, flipping through pages, laughing at the strange, loving data trail of her earliest days. And then Ava grew quiet again. She touched one page gently. You really tried, didn't you? Elon nodded. I did. I still am. She leaned her head on his shoulder. And for once, Elon didn't think about launch windows or orbital mechanics or quarterly reports. He just sat, with his daughter, on Earth. And in that stillness, it didn't feel like gravity was holding him down. It felt like love was. The house was quiet again. Ava had gone to bed early, curled beneath a blanket printed with constellations, her breathing slow and steady like waves on a distant moon. Elon stood in the hallway just outside her door, watching her for a few extra seconds before pulling it shut with a soft click. In the stillness that followed, he found himself wandering the house aimlessly, past the kitchen where syrup still stained the table, past the garage where an unfinished electric bike lay in pieces, and into the study where the shelves held more versions of himself than he cared to admit. Awards, photos, books he'd written and barely remember writing. And then there it was, a photograph, framed, forgotten. He reached for it slowly. Justine. She was laughing in the picture, something rare in the final years of their marriage. Her long, wavy hair fell over one shoulder, and she was holding baby Ava, barely a few months old, like the whole world fit perfectly in her arms. Elon sat down on the couch with the frame in his lap. And suddenly, like a pressure valve releasing, the memory came rushing in. It was 2 weeks before the papers were signed. The house had already split into camps of silence, her side and his side. They spoke only when they had to. Co-parenting logistics, property divisions, cold, practical things that made everything feel more sterile than space itself. But that night was different. That night, Justine asked the question, He had walked into the kitchen, bleary-eyed from a late-night simulation call with the engineers in Hawthorne. She was there, barefoot, leaning against the counter in her pajamas, staring at the ceiling like it might give her a reason to stay. "Can we talk?" she'd asked, arms crossed. "Sure," he said, dropping his bag without looking up. She waited for him to meet her eyes. "No. I mean, can you talk?" He blinked. "I'm talking now." She sighed. "No, Elon. Not words. Not facts. Not numbers. Just feelings. Real ones. No metrics. No equations." He opened the fridge, pretending to look for something he didn't need. "Justine." "I just need to know," she interrupted, her voice shaking. "Do you love your dreams more than you love the people in them?" That was it. The question. Not screamed. Not sobbed. Just spoken like a confession to a priest who might not answer. Elon froze. It wasn't that he didn't understand what she meant. It was that he understood it too well. He had spent his whole life in pursuit of the impossible, thinking that if he just reached the next milestone, the next launch, the next planet, everything would fall into place. That love would make sense. That success would equal safety. That people like code could be debugged with enough logic. But Justine had never wanted a programmer. She'd wanted a partner. So he gave her the safest answer he could. "I think," he said slowly, "that loving something bigger than yourself doesn't mean you stop loving what's right in front of you." Her laugh was soft, bitter. "You know what that sounds like?" "What?" "A thesis statement, not an answer." He didn't argue. He just stood there, feeling the air thicken between them. "You never once looked at me," she whispered. "Not really. You looked through me, past me, toward something else. And I tried to be okay with that. I really did." "I was building a future," he said. "So was I," she snapped, her voice rising. "I was building a family, Elon, not a launch pad." He finally turned toward her. "And I never stopped trying to protect that family. But not to be in it," she said, her voice now barely audible. "You wanted to be remembered more than you wanted to be here." That cut deeper than she could have known. He opened his mouth, closed it again. No calculation, no flowchart could explain how to answer a question like that without undoing everything. So he did what he always did when he didn't have an answer. He walked away, and the door between them, once metaphorical, became literal. Now, sitting in the same house years later, with Ava upstairs sleeping and the photo of Justine resting in his hands, Elon realized the weight of repetition. Ava had asked the same question, not with the same words, but with the same heart. And this time, he had felt it. The thing about brilliant minds, about people who see the world as puzzles to be solved, is that they often forget emotions aren't problems. They're proof that we exist beyond logic. He'd ignored Justine's question. He couldn't ignore Ava's. He stood, placed the photo gently on the mantle, and walked to his desk. Opening his laptop, he began to type. Not code, not specs, just words. To Ava, a letter, or maybe a roadmap. Not to space, but to himself. "You asked me if I love rockets more than your mom. I didn't answer you properly. The truth is, I loved your mom so much that it scared me. And I loved my work because it didn't ask me to be vulnerable. It just asked me to be brilliant. That was easier, safer. But safety isn't the same as love. And if I ever made you feel like Mars was more important than your smile, I failed at the only mission that really mattered." He paused. The cursor blinked. So much left unsaid. He hit save as draft. Tomorrow. He would tell her tomorrow. In person. No filter. No firewall. Just a father. Finally learning to land. The night sky over Bel Air was never completely dark. Light pollution bathed the city in a soft electric haze, dimming the stars but never quite erasing them. Elon hated that. He'd spent a lifetime trying to break free of that haze, literal and metaphorical. But tonight it felt oddly poetic. "Okay, Captain Ava," he said, tightening a knob on a telescope that looked more like a miniature rocket ship than a backyard tool. "Prepare for launch." Ava stood on the lawn wearing a hoodie 3 sizes too big and sparkly sneakers that lit up with every step. She eyed the telescope skeptically. "Is this really for astronomy?" she asked, "because it looks like it could take off." "That's the idea," Elon grinned. "If you can't bring the stars to the telescope, bring the telescope to the stars." She rolled her eyes. "You're such a nerd." "Correction," he said, adjusting the eyepiece. "I'm a highly accomplished nerd." The telescope, of course, wasn't store-bought. It was one of Elon's many prototypes, designed in a weekend, 3D, printed in titanium, and enhanced with an AI-guided star tracking system that had once accidentally locked onto a neighbor's drone, thinking it was an unidentified aerial object. He handed Ava a small remote. "Here, this adjusts the scope's angle. I've already aligned it with Saturn." Ava took it cautiously. "What if I break it?" "Then it explodes," Elon said with a straight face. Her eyes widened. "Kidding," he added quickly. "Mostly." She leaned over the scope, squinting. "Oh my gosh, it has rings." He beamed. "Yep, made of ice and rock. If Saturn were in our bathtub, its rings would barely stay afloat." "We don't have a bathtub big enough for that." "We don't have one yet," he winked. She giggled. He watched her face light up in a way no prototype ever had. This was why he built things, to see awe spark in people's eyes. And yet, as he watched her looking at Saturn, he realized something strange. He wasn't thinking about what was out there. He was thinking about what was right here. He pointed upward. "You see that bright spot over there? That's Vega. One of the first stars I ever mapped when I was your age." Was the sky clearer back then? Maybe. Or maybe I was just looking harder. She adjusted the telescope. "I wish you looked this hard at people." That hit like a comet. He tried to smile, but it faded. "I'm working on that, Ava." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she lay down on the blanket Elon had spread out over the grass. Her hair fanned out like a constellation of its own. He lay beside her. For a while, they just watched the stars. And then she asked it. The question. "Daddy," she said, her voice soft but unwavering, "if Earth is so beautiful, why do you want to leave it so much?" Elon turned his head slowly. Her face was calm, innocent, curious. But underneath, he could feel the weight of something deeper. "Why do you want to leave me?" is what she was really asking. He stared back up at the sky, suddenly feeling very small. "I don't want to leave it," he said finally. "I just don't want us to be trapped on it." "But we're here," she said. "I'm here. Mommy was here. Your favorite pancakes are here. Isn't that enough?" He swallowed. "Sometimes I think the reason I work so hard to build rockets is because I'm scared." Ava blinked. "Scared of what?" "That we'll lose this place. That something will happen to Earth, and we won't be ready. That I'll fail to protect the people I love because I didn't plan far enough ahead." She sat up. "But what if we just protected it better, instead of trying to escape it?" That silenced him. He looked at her, this small, stargazing philosopher who had inherited both her mother's heart and his ability to spot weaknesses in a system. "You might be smarter than me," he said. She smirked. "I've always suspected." He chuckled, but the truth lingered. She wasn't just asking about the stars. She was asking about his choices, his priorities, his presence. About whether he could ever fully land on something, on someone, instead of constantly launching away. A sudden gust of wind blew across the lawn, sending a few pages of Elon's notes tumbling. Ava chased one down and handed it back to him. It read, "Objective, inspire wonder. Sustain humanity. Stay grounded." She looked at the note. "You wrote that." He nodded. "Do you think you've done it?" He looked up at the stars. "I think I've inspired wonder. Maybe. Sustaining humanity, still in progress. And staying grounded." He looked at her. "That's what you're teaching me." She didn't smile this time. She just leaned against his arm. The telescope buzzed faintly as it realigned itself to follow Jupiter. The world turned, the stars stayed the same, and for once, Elon didn't feel like he needed to chase them. Maybe, just maybe, they were enough, so long as he didn't miss the one star beside him. Ava yawned. "Bedtime," he asked. 5 more minutes." He nodded, watching her eyes drift shut against his shoulder. 5 more minutes. 5 million stars. And finally, one answer worth holding on to. The next morning, the stars were gone, replaced by the burnt orange light of Los Angeles at rush hour. Elon Musk sat in the driver's seat of a sleek black Tesla Model X, hands on the wheel but eyes flicking toward the passenger seat every few seconds. Ava sat beside him, backpack on her lap, humming to herself. Her curls bounced with every pothole and red light. A piece of cereal was stuck to her hoodie, which neither of them had noticed. She was wearing mismatched socks on purpose, a quiet rebellion Elon secretly admired. Traffic on Sunset was brutal as always. The screen on the dashboard flashed real-time updates from the car's autopilot system, but Elon wasn't letting go of the wheel today. He wanted to drive, to feel the friction, the flow, the control. At least here, he could navigate something. Ava turned to him suddenly. "You know what I think?" "Oh," Elon said. "This is usually when things get dangerous." She ignored that. "I think you're an alien." He choked on his sip of coffee. "I beg your pardon." "Yup," she said, adjusting her seat dramatically. "An alien. From planet Tesla, 7 or something. Sent here to study Earthlings." He laughed. "What gave me away? My ears? The hoodie? My complete inability to fold fitted sheets?" "No," she said, as if this were obvious. "It's the way you look at stuff." Elon raised an eyebrow. "How do I look at stuff?" "Like it's a machine. Like you're trying to figure out how to fix it. Even people. You're always watching them like they're broken." He winced but played along. "Maybe that's because they are broken. Ever been online?" She smirked. "See? That's exactly what an alien would say." The car rolled to a stop at another red light. Elon looked out the window, watching a woman on the sidewalk struggle with a toddler and a leash dog who clearly had other life goals. The child dropped a juice box. The woman dropped her phone. The dog barked at a pigeon. Pure chaos. But somehow it worked. Ava continued, "You probably have alien meetings when I'm asleep. With the others. You're like, mission report, humans still emotional. Proceeding with caution." Elon laughed again, more genuinely this time. "And what do we aliens do when we're confused by emotions?" "You send a drone to observe from a safe distance." He glanced at her. "That's not entirely false." They cruised past a row of palm trees, their long shadows falling across the hood of the car. The city buzzed around them, sirens, honks, laughter, life. Elon felt like he was inside a snow globe someone kept shaking. Then Ava got quiet, the kind of quiet Elon had learned to fear. "You know," she said after a beat, "maybe that's why you don't understand human feelings." He turned to her slowly. "Because I'm an alien." She nodded, not smiling anymore. "Or maybe you just pretend to be. So you don't have to deal with the hard stuff." The words landed hard, not because she meant them as an attack, but because she didn't. She said it like someone stating a weather pattern, like someone holding up a mirror. Elon's grip tightened slightly on the wheel. "Is that what you think?" he asked, voice softer now. Ava looked out the window. "Sometimes. You act like feelings are code, like you can debug them, but they're not. They're just messy." He let that settle. The light turned green. The car rolled forward. "I used to think," he began, "that if I could understand how everything worked, rockets, electricity, even memory, I could control it. Like emotions were just another system." "And are they?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not even close." They drove in silence for a while, the city slipping past them like a movie montage. Elon thought about the times he tried to fix things with logic. With Justine. With Ava. With himself. As if he could outthink grief, schedule forgiveness, or automate connection. "You know what the hardest part is?" he said quietly. Ava glanced at him. "Being scared of hurting people," he continued. "So you pull away. You hide behind ideas. Projects. Muffs. Like if you just stay busy enough, no one can see that you're actually terrified." She didn't say anything at first. Then she reached into her backpack and pulled out a small, wrinkled drawing. It showed a rocket ship with a smiley face and a girl in the window waving. "This was from when I was 6, she said. "You were leaving for another launch." I gave you this at the airport. You said you'd hang it in your office." Elon blinked. "I remember." She handed it to him. It was in a drawer. Oof. He took the drawing, unfolded it slowly, and looked at it for a long time. The rocket was crude, just rectangles and triangles and a swirl of stars, but the message beneath it hit harder than any launch countdown. "Don't forget Earth." He exhaled. "I'm sorry," he said, "for forgetting sometimes." Ava shrugged. "It's okay. Aliens probably have bad memory." He laughed, wiping a tear from his eye before it could betray him. The school came into view. He pulled up to the curb and put the car in park. Ava leaned over and kissed his cheek. "Try to be a little more human today, okay?" "I'll do my best," he said. She opened the door, then paused. "And if you ever get confused by emotions again." "Yes. Just ask. I speak fluent human." Then she hopped out and disappeared into the crowd of kids. Elon watched her go, clutching the drawing like a transmission from a distant galaxy. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was an alien. But today, he was learning the language. That Friday afternoon, Elon canceled everything. Meetings, calls, a last-minute board review, even a SpaceX milestone event that would have made headlines. The world could wait. For once, he couldn't. He picked Ava up from school himself. She was surprised. Her eyebrows lifted in that way she did when something didn't make sense, an inherited tic from Justine. "No autopilot." "Nope," Elon said, unlocking the door. "Full manual today." "Wow," she said, sliding into the seat. "Who are you, and what have you done with my father?" He smiled but said nothing. That evening, they had pizza on the back deck, half pepperoni, half pineapple because Ava insisted it was the most controversial flavor and must be defended at all costs. They laughed more than usual. Ava told him about a boy in her class who tried to impress everyone by eating a crayon. Elon told her about the time a Tesla investor asked if electric cars worked underwater. Neither story ended well, but both were hilarious in hindsight. As dusk settled and the first stars blinked overhead, Ava looked up from her plate and asked, "Do you want to see my treasure room?" Elon blinked. "Your what now?" "My treasure room," she repeated, standing. "Come on. You've never seen it." He followed her through the house, past familiar hallways, and into her bedroom. But instead of stopping there, she opened her closet and pushed aside a row of jackets, revealing a narrow door hidden in the paneling. "Wait, has this always been here?" he asked. She shrugged. "I asked the builders not to tell you." He raised an eyebrow, impressed. "That explains the extra square footage on the blueprints." Inside was a small, windowless nook, barely wide enough for two people to sit side by side. The walls were covered in drawings. Paper cranes hung from the ceiling like frozen fireworks. A single battery-powered lantern flickered on a shelf. In the center sat a weathered shoebox covered in stickers and scotch tape, labeled in bold marker. Ava's secret stuff, no dads allowed unless it's time. She opened the lid. Inside were treasures, but not the kind Elon had expected. There was a napkin from a diner they visited when she was 5. A faded photo of them in matching sunglasses, Ava's lopsided smile missing a front tooth. A piece of a SpaceX launch confetti ribbon, torn and folded into the shape of a star. But also, a birthday card Elon had never signed. A movie ticket stub with "canceled" written in red marker. A small plastic horse from a toy set he'd promised to play with and never did. A hand-drawn calendar, marked with stars on days when he was supposed to come home early, each one crossed out. Elon felt his throat tighten. "I save things," Ava said softly, "so I don't forget the good parts. And so I can understand the other parts too." He didn't speak. He couldn't. The weight of it all pressed against his ribs like gravity had doubled. She handed him a folded note. It was scribbled in crayon, written when she was younger. "Dear Daddy, if your rocket goes to Mars and I go to sleep, will you still come back before I wake up?" He closed his eyes. "I know you're busy," Ava added quickly, not accusing, just clarifying. "I know you don't mean to miss things. But sometimes, I feel like I'm collecting broken promises. So I keep the good ones." to balance it out. Elon opened his eyes and looked at her. Not just looked, saw. And in that tiny room built of paper, tape, and truth, he saw himself too. Not the public version, the innovator, the visionary, but the father who didn't show up for movie night. The dad who answered email during bedtime stories. The man who believed the future would fix the past if he just worked hard enough. "I didn't know," he whispered. Ava smiled gently. That's why it was a secret. He sat beside her and took the shoebox in his lap. Slowly, reverently, he sifted through the memories. He laughed when he found a poorly drawn doodle of a rocket that looked suspiciously like a carrot. He shook his head at a tiny clay sculpture of a dragon they never finished. He traced the edges of a paper flower labeled "For when you miss a real one." "I thought I was giving you the world," he said, "but maybe I was just giving you excuses." "You gave me pieces of the world," she said, laying her head on his shoulder. "But I wanted more pieces of you." That sentence struck deeper than any investor critique ever had. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Ava raised an eyebrow. "You better not be checking emails." "No," he said. "I'm deleting them." He showed her as he removed his entire calendar for the next day. Meetings, calls, press, all gone in seconds. "Tomorrow," he said, "I'm yours. No tech, no work, just treasure hunting." Her eyes widened. "Real treasure." He grinned. "The realist, but you have to plan it. Maps, clues, maybe a hidden cake at the end." "You're serious?" "I'm an engineer. I never joke about maps." Ava giggled and hugged him tightly. "You're kinda weird, Daddy." "I know," he said, "but I'm learning." And in that tiny room with no windows but walls full of light, Elon Musk realized something that even Mars hadn't taught him. The greatest legacy isn't built in space. It's built in shoeboxes full of second chances. It was nearly midnight when Elon found himself in the kitchen, half asleep, chewing on a cold slice of pizza that had somehow survived Ava's treasure feast. The house was quiet, save for the distant hum of electronics and the occasional creak of a solar-powered refrigerator that was trying very hard not to overachieve. He leaned on the marble counter, still thinking about Ava's secret room. The shoebox, the memories, the little paper flower meant to replace the real ones he forgot to bring. He sighed. "Marvin," he said to the ceiling, "are you awake?" A soft blue glow lit up on the far wall, and the familiar synthetic voice responded, "Sir, I am a domestic AI. I am always awake, even when I wish I weren't." "Right. Forgot we gave you sarcasm mode," Elon muttered. "Technically," Marvin replied, "you insisted on sarcasm mode because you said, quote, 'If my assistant can't roast me like a barista with insomnia, what's the point?'" Elon smirked. "Fair." He walked over to the built-in wall interface and tapped it to life. Marvin's digital face appeared, a minimalist design with shifting eyes and a blinking mouth that always looked vaguely unimpressed. "I need advice," Elon said. "I am not licensed for therapy," Marvin replied immediately. "Also, your insurance provider does not cover robotic guilt processing." Elon rolled his eyes. "It's about Ava." Marvin paused. Parental queries detected. Initiating emotional calibration protocol. Would you prefer your answers in brutal honesty, gentle deflection, or simulated maternal warmth? Elon laughed. "Let's go with brutal honesty. I'm already emotionally naked. Might as well finish the striptease." "Very well," Marvin said. "Proceed." Elon paced the floor, thinking. "I've been trying to be more present," he said. "Like really present. Less distraction. More memory making. But I can't shake the feeling that I've already missed too much. That I've coded myself into a version of fatherhood that's more metaphor than real." Marvin's eyes blinked slowly. "According to compiled psychological literature and behavior models," he replied, "fathers who pursue high-impact careers while raising children often display the following patterns: overcompensation through gifts, repeated broken commitments, and the belief that legacy can replace intimacy." Elon raised an eyebrow. "Wow, thanks for the hug." "You selected brutal honesty, sir." "Touché." Marvin continued. Additionally, emotional disconnection during key developmental years increases the likelihood of children forming attachments to symbolic substitutes. In Ava's case, shoeboxes, paper stars, and napkins from diners. Elon rubbed his eyes. Yeah, I saw that. Would you like statistics? Marvin offered. No. Here they are anyway. 61% of emotionally distant fathers attempt reconciliation through late-stage presence. Only 32% are successful in rebuilding full emotional trust before adolescence ends. Wow, Elon said, half laughing. So I've basically got a coin toss between redemption and therapy bills. Actually, Marvin corrected, therapy bills are inevitable. Redemption is optional. Elon leaned against the counter, folding his arms. When did you get so philosophical? You programmed me to study human behavior, Marvin said. Then you left me alone in a house with subscription streaming services and 17 years of TED Talks. Okay, that's on me. There was a pause. Elon looked up at the screen. Marvin's glowing eyes were motionless, as if giving space for the moment to breathe. Then Elon asked, "Do you think I'm a bad dad?" The question hung in the air like a satellite drifting too far from its source. Marvin blinked. "I do not possess emotions. However, based on data, I can provide this. You are not a bad father. You are a distracted father. You are a father who outsourced empathy to ambition." That sounded awfully emotional. It's not. It's optimized. Elon chuckled, but the weight of the words lingered. "Do you regret it?" Marvin asked. Elon looked up, surprised. "You're asking me questions now. You asked for a conversation. This is the part where the AI flips the table." Elon sat down at the kitchen island, suddenly tired. "Yes," he said quietly. "I regret every bedtime I missed. Every one SEC that turned into an hour. Every birthday I rescheduled for a product launch. But I also know I did what I thought was right. I believe building a future would guarantee her happiness." Marvin replied, "Happiness is not a deliverable." Elon nodded. "No, it's not." There was a silence again. Then Marvin's screen shifted. A digital drawing appeared. A crude childlike sketch, Ava's, of her and Elon holding hands beneath a rocket ship with the words, "Me and Daddy go to the stars." "I accessed this from Ava's school files," Marvin said. She uploaded it to a project titled My Dream Day. Elon's breath caught. Marvin's voice softened slightly, less synthetic now. "Perhaps the question isn't whether you failed. Perhaps it's whether you're still writing." Elon stood up. "You know what, Marvin? For a glorified vacuum cleaner with a screen, you're not bad." "I live to serve," Marvin replied flatly. "Also, I need a firmware update. Add it to the list." As Elon turned off the lights and headed down the hallway toward Ava's room, Marvin's voice followed him, quieter this time. "She still believes in you, sir. Don't make her regret that." Elon paused at Ava's door. He peeked inside. She was asleep, arms curled around a plush astronaut doll he hadn't seen in years. On the floor beside her bed was her shoebox, closed again but not locked. He smiled, then whispered into the dark, "I won't." It was being billed as the future of human destiny, Mars and beyond. The main hall of the Global Space Symposium in Geneva shimmered under cool, white lights. The stage design was minimalist, clean lines, sleek chrome edges, and a massive screen behind Elon Musk that displayed a slow rotation of the red planet. Mars loomed like an ancient god watching. Elon stood center stage in his trademark dark blazer and black shirt, gesturing toward a wireframe animation of an interplanetary colony. "Within 10 years, he declared, this won't be theory, it'll be logistics. We're not just talking survival. We're talking sovereignty, a self-sustaining society on another world." Applause rippled through the auditorium. Cameras clicked. Live stream feeds translated his words into 34 languages. He glanced at the crowd, world leaders, investors, scientists, influencers, all looking to him like pilgrims before an oracle. "And the beauty," he continued, "is that Mars gives us a chance to start fresh. A reset. No inherited systems. Just pure design, humanity 2.0. The audience leaned forward. But just as he launched into a slide titled Terraforming Timelines, something unexpected happened. A figure darted out from stage left. Small, determined, familiar. Elon's mind processed it in slow motion. Ava. She was wearing jeans, a pink hoodie, and her NASA is cool but dads are cooler cap. Her eyes were locked onto him with a mixture of defiance and vulnerability that made his spine freeze. Security hesitated. They recognized her, had seen her in the VIP lounge earlier. No one moved. The audience murmured in confusion. Ava marched up beside him and, without waiting for permission, took the microphone from the podium. Her voice rang out across the global feed. "Excuse me," she said. The murmuring stopped. Ava turned to Elon. Her voice didn't tremble. "If Mars is your future, where do I fit in?" A silence fell across the auditorium. A true bone-deep silence. Not the kind you plan for in presentations. The kind that shifts tectonic plates. Elon's mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. He blinked, swallowed. His mind raced for a comeback. A joke. A lifeline. None came. The image on the screen behind them, a rotating simulation of Martian terrain, kept spinning. The audience stared. Some in awe. Some in secondhand discomfort. Others in awe of the discomfort. A slow wave of applause started. First a single clap, hesitant. Then more. Then thunderous. Ava blinked in surprise as the sound swelled around her. She turned back to Elon, suddenly uncertain. He leaned into the mic. His voice, when it came, was quiet. "That's a fair question." The applause quieted. Elon knelt down so they were eye to eye. "Do you want the honest answer?" She nodded, frowning. "I don't know," he said, "but I want to figure it out. Not just for me, for us." Someone in the audience stood up and cheered. Others followed. Cameras flashed. Hashtags ignited. Within minutes, the clip was trending. Hashtag where do I fit? Hashtag Ava Musk moment. Hashtag Mars can wait. Backstage chaos erupted. Press agents shouting into headsets, PR staff scrambling for statements. But Elon didn't move. He reached for Ava's hand and gave it a squeeze. "Want to finish this keynote with me?" he asked. She shook her head. "I think you need to go finish being my dad." He let out a breath, half laugh, half ache. Fair enough. He walked her off stage himself, ignoring the cameras that swarmed the aisle. Backstage, his assistant was already holding out a phone. "Elon, it's CNN, BBC, Wall Street Journal." "Not now," he said. "Sir, we need to frame this before it spins out." "It already spun," he replied calmly. "Let it." He and Ava exited through a side door into the cold Geneva night. A car was waiting, but they didn't get in right away. They stood on the curb beneath a street lamp, breath visible in the winter air. "You okay?" he asked. Ava looked down. "I didn't mean to embarrass you." "You didn't," he said. "You reminded me why I'm doing all this." She looked up. "For me?" "No," he said, smiling. "For us." They drove back to the hotel in silence, but it wasn't heavy. It was earned. When they arrived, Elon turned on the hotel fireplace and tossed his phone onto the couch without checking it. He sat beside her, elbows on knees, watching the flames flicker. "You know," he said after a moment, "when I talk about Mars, I always imagine it full of people who haven't made our mistakes yet. People who get it right." Ava leaned her head on his shoulder. "Maybe getting it right means not running away," she said. He nodded. "Maybe Mars was my way of avoiding the hard stuff." "Like feelings?" she asked. "Especially feelings." She smirked. "You are an alien." He chuckled. "Well, the alien just got a reality check from a very brave Earthling." She yawned. He looked down at her and said, "You asked me where you fit in. The truth is, without you, none of it fits." She didn't answer. She had already fallen asleep. Elon reached for a blanket and tucked it around her shoulders. He glanced at the flickering fire, then at his silenced phone. Somewhere out there, 1,000 headlines were spinning. The stock market would rise and fall. Think pieces would be written. Memes created. But in this moment, in this room, there was just a father and his daughter. And Mars? Mars could wait. The private jet touched down on a narrow airstrip carved into the green spine of a remote island in the Pacific. No paparazzi, no reporters, no signal. Not even Marvin's voice followed them here. Just salt air, birdsong, and the rhythmic hush of waves. Elon stepped onto the sun-warmed tarmac and inhaled deeply. No metal, no combustion, no launch pads, just the raw breath of the earth. Beside him, Ava removed her shoes before her backpack, immediately stepping barefoot onto the grass like a seasoned traveler of untouched places. She twirled slowly, arms wide. "You're sure we're not on Mars?" "Positive," Elon said. "There's way more oxygen and significantly fewer existential crises." They reached a small eco-hut, one of only 2 on the island. No screens, no tech, no cameras, just wood, stone, and an old hammock that creaked like it had secrets. It was Ava's idea in a way. After the conference incident and the avalanche of public response, Elon had canceled his next dozen appearances, silenced his calendar, and told his team, "I'm going off-grid, and I'm taking my daughter with me." He didn't say when he'd be back. The island was an old retreat once used for sustainability research. Elon had invested in it years ago, but had never visited in person. Now it would become a pause button, a way to let the noise settle. The first evening, they caught nothing. Elon, holding a fishing rod with all the confidence of a man who had engineered escape velocity but never baited a real hook, stared at the water. Fish are evasive. Ava giggled from the shore, feet splashing in the shallows. "Maybe you need to stop thinking like a rocket scientist." "I'm not sure I know how to do that." She waded over and gently took the rod. "You're holding it too tight. They feel your tension." "That's not how physics works." "That's how nature works," she said, grinning. The second evening, they caught a fish. Ava named it Sparky and insisted they thank it before cooking. Elon awkwardly whispered, "Thanks, Sparky," and grilled it over an open fire with herbs they picked from a garden he didn't know existed behind the hut. That night, under a sky free of satellites, they lay on the sand and counted stars, real ones, not the metaphorical ones Elon usually launched. "What did you want to be when you were my age?" Ava asked. He paused. "A magician, or an astronaut, or maybe a writer. I didn't know. I just wanted to make things that didn't exist." She looked at him. "You kind of did all of that." "Yeah," he admitted, "but I forgot to be a person in the process." She reached for his hand. "You're remembering now." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. By the third day, they had a rhythm. They made pancakes over a camp stove. They swam in tide pools and discovered sea urchins. Ava showed Elon how to braid vines poorly, and he retaliated by teaching her how to carve a spoon. She carved something that looked more like a question mark. They both agreed it was symbolic. At night, they played shadow puppets against the hut wall by firelight. Elon's were rigid and mechanical. Ava's danced with unexpected grace. "Yours are better," he admitted. "You're better at rockets," she shrugged. They laughed until their bellies hurt. And then, during a quiet hike through the jungle path lined with banyan trees, Ava turned to him and asked, "Do you like this version of you better?" He stopped walking. She wasn't teasing. Her voice held that same layered simplicity he was beginning to recognize as her emotional fingerprint. "I do," he said slowly. "He feels lighter." "Then keep him." He smiled, but the truth was, he didn't know if he could. Off-island, the world waited. Mars waited. Responsibilities pulsed like satellites in his mind. But right here, in this sliver of paradise, he was just dad. Not CEO, not innovator, not icon, just a barefoot man teaching his daughter how to build a driftwood fort. On their last night, they sat by the fire, wrapped in a shared blanket. Ava was sleepy but fighting it, her head leaning into his shoulder. "You know what I've been thinking," she murmured. "Please don't say I'm an alien again." She smiled. "No, I've been thinking, maybe we don't need to live on Mars. Maybe we just need to live better here." He exhaled. Simple, honest, obvious. She always made things feel that way. The fire cracked, sending sparks up like tiny galaxies. "You might be right," he said. And in that stillness, Elon realized he didn't need to conquer another planet to leave a legacy. He just needed to build something sacred between now and her. Elon had always believed that gravity was overrated. On a scientific level, it limited movement, kept rockets tethered until combustion broke the rules. On an emotional level, it weighed decisions, anchored guilt, pinned people down with expectations. But in zero gravity, there was only motion, possibility, play. Ava floated past him in the cabin of the modified SpaceX jet, hair puffed upward like a cloud of bronze silk, her arms outstretched, laughing. It was the first time he'd seen her truly weightless, not just physically, but emotionally. There was no shoebox here, no napkin notes, no questions about Mars or missed bedtimes. Just the two of them, and air, and movement. The cabin had been cleared of the usual crew and stripped of complex instrumentation. Just a padded interior, reinforced windows, and a few camera mounts for footage that, for once, Elon didn't care about capturing. He had pulled favors. This wasn't a public demonstration. No press, no marketing. Just a father giving his daughter an experience that felt like a dream. Ava did a slow cartwheel midair, giggling as she gently bumped off a wall and bounced toward him like a balloon on a lazy trajectory. "Did you ever do this when you were a kid?" she asked, her voice more curious than accusatory now. "No," Elon said, pushing himself into a gentle spin. "I imagined it, though, all the time." "What did it feel like when it finally happened?" He considered. "Like my brain had been underwater my whole life, and this was the first deep breath of air." She nodded. "I get that." She grabbed his hand, and the two of them began to orbit gently, a pair of human satellites dancing without music. For a while, they said nothing, just floated, collided softly, pushed off again. The silence wasn't awkward, it was expansive. Like outer space itself had lent them a sliver of its peace. Elon studied her face, flushed with excitement, eyes wide, the beginnings of a smile always ready. It was hard to believe this was the same girl who'd stood on a global stage and asked him where she fit in. She seemed different now. No, he was different. Being here with her, outside the pull of Earth, stripped away everything artificial. The pressure, the noise, the image of who he was supposed to be. Without gravity, he could finally see what grounded him all along. Not Mars, not legacy, her. Ava gently somersaulted again and then mid-spin called out, "Hey, Dad." "Yeah. What if we lived here?" He laughed. "In zero gravity?" "Yeah. Think about it. No chores, no sit-up straight, no spilled juice, just floaty hugs and bedtime stories that never land." He smiled. "I could build you a house with magnetic sleeping bags, and a kitchen with floating pancakes, and a bathroom that doesn't terrify astronauts." They both laughed. Then she added more quietly, "You're really good at this. The us thing." He didn't answer right away. He was holding too much in. Instead, he reached into the cargo pocket of his jumpsuit and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "What's that?" she asked, intrigued. "A letter." "From who?" "From me. To you." Ava raised an eyebrow. "Right now?" "I started it last night," he said. "After the island. Before the flight. But I think I need to finish it after this. Can I read it?" He hesitated. "Soon." She gave him a mock suspicious squint, then let it go. They floated for a bit longer, playing with small toys designed to spin and twist in the air, laughing as they lost control of a pen that shot past like a tiny torpedo. And then the captain's voice echoed in the cabin, "Beginning descent in 2 minutes. Prepare for re-entry into normal gravity." Ava sighed, back to boring old Earth. Elon caught her hand. "Let's keep some of this with us, okay?" She smiled. "Deal." Back on the tarmac, as the plane door opened and sunlight poured in, Elon felt a strange resistance return. The ground was pulling at him again. Not just physically, but symbolically. Back to pressure, back to noise, But this time, he wasn't letting go of what he felt up there. That night, after Ava had fallen asleep with cheeks still flushed from a flight, Elon sat in his office with the letter. He smoothed it out, reread what he'd written. Then, slowly, deliberately, he added more. Dear Ava, today we floated. No agenda, no launch, no future plans. Just you and me weightless. And in that space, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Free. Not from gravity, or from work, or even from guilt, but free to be. With you, I built rockets to escape the atmosphere. I thought maybe leaving Earth would help us save it. And maybe that's still true. But I realize now, I didn't need to leave the planet. I needed to land. On the ground where you stand. You're the only mission that ever mattered. And I've been late to it for too long. But I'm here now. And I'm staying. Love, Dad. He folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, and wrote her name on the front. Then he walked down the hall and gently tucked it into her shoebox of treasures. A new memory, a real one, and this one wouldn't go unread. They thought Elon Musk had gone quiet. After the viral conference interruption, the island retreat, the gravity-free flight, and a noticeable drop-off in public appearances, speculation spun in every direction. Headlines guessed everything from a nervous breakdown to a top-secret Mars mission. But inside a quiet warehouse on the outskirts of Austin, Texas, far from SpaceX, Tesla, or Neuralink, Elon was building something no one could have predicted. Not a rocket, not a car, not an AI assistant. A feeling he called a heart. Human Emotional AI Research Terminal. The name was clinical. Sure, this was Elon after all, but the mission wasn't. This wasn't about launching humanity into space. It was about returning them to one another. About creating a place where fathers and daughters, mothers and sons, siblings, friends, even strangers could reconnect in a way they'd forgotten was possible. He didn't announce it. No press, no investors, no prototype video with dramatic music. He just showed up every day and built. The structure looked nothing like a lab. From the outside, it resembled a large greenhouse, curved glass walls, covered in soft ivy, bathed in natural light. But inside, it was something else entirely. A gentle fusion of science and soul. Elon divided the space into emotional stations, each one using carefully programmed AI, interactive lighting, and biometrics to create shared experiences that fostered trust, reflection, and vulnerability. It was part art exhibit, part therapy, part memory machine. There was a room called the Mirror, where two people sat across from each other, while subtle facial mapping tech highlighted moments of emotion on transparent displays, encouraging deeper eye contact and empathy. Another room, the Memory Halo, allowed participants to input stories from their past. The AI would recreate the scene in soft light projections around them, complete with ambient sounds, smells, and music. Then there was the Forgiveness Chamber, where people could speak out loud, in complete privacy. The words were never recorded, only transformed into abstract sound and light, released into a suspended orb in the center. A symbol of letting go. And at the heart of it all, the resonance tunnel, a long, curved corridor where every step triggered shared heartbeat like pulses in the floor and walls. It was designed to sync two people's movements into one flow, without instructions, just rhythm, just instinct. On the day it was ready, Elon didn't send an invite. He sent a text. To Ava, "Want to see something I built just for us?" She arrived at 4:37 p.m. wearing oversized sunglasses and a t-shirt that said, "Introverts assemble separately." Elon met her at the entrance, where sunlight filtered through the curved glass. "This doesn't look like a lab," she said. "It's not," he replied. "It's a feeling we can walk through." He led her inside. They started with the mirror. Ava sat across from him and giggled as digital outlines mapped their expressions in real time. Each micro-smile, each shift of the brow, rendered in soft light trails. "Wow," she said. "I can literally see you overthinking." Elon chuckled. "It's a full-time job." When her face lit up with laughter, the system responded. tiny constellations appeared between them on the screen, connecting their eyes with shimmering lines. Next, they entered the memory halo. Ava chose a memory. Age 6, a rainy day, sitting under the kitchen table making moon sandwiches, while Elon tried to explain the phases of the moon using bagel halves. The AI recreated it with surprising fidelity. The kitchen, the rain against the window, the faint smell of toasted bread. Ava gasped. "That's exactly how it felt," she whispered. "That's the point," he said. They sat in silence, letting the memory breathe. In the forgiveness chamber, Ava was hesitant. "What do I say?" "Anything you want," Elon said. "It's for you." She closed her eyes and whispered something he couldn't hear. A swirl of glowing mist rose from the center orb, pulsed softly, then faded upward like a sigh. She stepped out lighter, and then they reached the resonance tunnel. Elon gestured toward it. "No instructions. Just walk." She entered first, then paused, waiting for him. As they walked side by side, the floor responded, soft pulses with every step, slowly aligning with their pace. Their paths curved slightly toward one another, naturally, until they were walking in unison without thinking. The lights warmed as they moved. The pulse deepened, 2 beats becoming 1. Halfway through, Ava slipped her hand into his. No words, just rhythm, just breath. When they exited, she turned to him and said, "This isn't a project. It's a promise." He looked at her, eyes glinting with pride and something more vulnerable. "It's the first thing I've built that doesn't need to fly." Ava nodded. "You built a heart." And for once, Elon Musk had nothing to add. That evening, long after she'd gone home and the sun had dipped behind the Texas hills, Elon stood alone in the center of the heart. He walked through each room one more time, touching the walls like he was reading Braille. Each echo, each light, each beat had meaning. He wasn't fixing humanity. He was learning how to feel it. The countdown clock hovered at T-9 minutes. Cape Canaveral shimmered under the Florida sun. Cameras clicked. Satellites aligned. The world watched with bated breath. Another SpaceX rocket was about to launch. Another leap toward orbit. Another mission to the stars. But this time, something was different. There were whispers among the technicians. Unusual script changes. Elon had cut the technical portion of the live address, replaced it with something he refused to preview. "Just trust me," he'd said, walking barefoot across the hangar earlier that morning, sipping cold chamomile tea and humming Sinatra. That alone had been enough to rattle the engineers. Now the media platform was packed. Heads of state, astronauts, billionaires, and students all watching screens. Even NASA's old guard leaned in. But Elon wasn't standing near the boosters or the command center. He was standing on a small platform just beneath the launch tower, alone, wearing no headset, no badge, no corporate armor. Just a soft gray shirt, sleeves rolled, wind tugging gently at his hair. Beside him, a single mic. He stepped forward. "Hello," he said. "This won't be long." The world leaned closer. "You're probably expecting numbers, specs, payload details, maybe a sneak peek of what's on board. And don't worry, she's a beauty. She'll fly like poetry." He paused. "But this time, I'm not launching a rocket. I'm launching something I should have launched a long time ago." Silence. Elon looked down for a second, gathered breath, then continued. "This message is for someone who once asked me a question I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't know the words, but because I didn't know how to feel them yet." He looked into the camera. "For my daughter, Ava. You asked me if Mars was my future, where you fit in." Behind him, the rocket shimmered in the sunlight, still, silent, like it was listening too. "I used to think the world needed me to build rockets, to invent, to conquer physics. But the truth is, the world just needed me to come home. I miss birthdays. I miss questions at bedtime. I miss the sound of your laugh when it wasn't playing through a phone." He paused again. "I can't go back and relaunch the past, but I can change what takes off from here." A subtle wave of emotion moved through the crowd. Some blinked. Some shifted in their seats. Engineers stopped typing. a live translator in Japan began to cry. "I've launched many things in my life," Elon continued. "But today, I want to launch a new idea. That the greatest legacy we leave behind isn't in code or carbon or cosmic dust. It's in presence. It's in love." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small, folded paper. "This was a note I found inside my daughter's memory box. It was written when she was 7. He unfolded it. "Dear Daddy, if your rocket goes to Mars and I go to sleep, will you still come back before I wake up?" The crowd was silent. The only sound was the distant caw of gulls over the Atlantic. "I didn't have an answer then," Elon said, "but I do now." He turned to face the launch tower behind him, eyes lifted. "I'll always come back, because love isn't a destination, it's a direction." A soft murmur spread through the onlookers. The kind of collective breath a world takes when something shifts, not outside but inside. Elon stepped back, just as the launch director's voice crackled over the loudspeakers. "T-3 minutes. Final go for ignition." He didn't speak again. He simply turned toward the camera one last time and smiled, genuine, warm, a little weary. And then, just as the engines began to rumble, a new message appeared on the main screen of the broadcast. Not telemetry, not fuel stats, just 6 glowing words. "To Ava, you are my Earth." At home in Austin, Ava sat cross-legged on the floor, watching the launch stream from her bedroom. She had seen countless takeoffs before, but never like this. She didn't smile right away. She just stared, eyes wide, hands on her knees. When the rocket finally surged upward, trailing fire and light into the sky, she whispered to herself, "He answered." And then she smiled, not because the rocket flew, but because her father had finally landed. That night, the world trended not with hashtag launch specs or hashtag Marsbound. It trended with hashtag To Ava, with hashtag You Are My Earth, with hashtag Love Launch. Comment sections overflowed, not with debates, but with letters. People wrote messages to sons, to daughters, to parents they hadn't called in years. CEOs sent videos of themselves taking the day off. Teachers showed students the speech during homeroom. And in the quiet, unbroadcast corners of the world, more than a few children received surprise bedtime stories. Later that evening, in Elon's home, the air was quiet. He stood outside on the balcony, looking at the stars, sipping tea from a mug Ava had made at a school art fair. It said "World's Most Confusing Dad" in lumpy blue paint. Ava came up beside him and leaned on the railing. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm floating," he said. She nodded. "I liked your speech," she added. "Too sappy?" "No, just the right amount." He turned to her. "You think it's possible to keep building rockets and still be this?" "I think," she said, "if you keep remembering why you're building them, you'll never drift too far." He reached into his pocket and handed her something small. It was a tiny pin, a gold heart with a rocket trail behind it. "I designed it this morning. For heart," he said. "Version 2.0, with your upgrades." She clipped it to her hoodie. Together they looked up. And for the first time in his life, Elon didn't wonder what was out there. He knew everything that mattered was standing right next to him. The letter was hidden in a book. Elon wasn't looking for it. He was organizing Ava's room, well, attempting to, while she was out visiting a friend. A rare, quiet Saturday afternoon, the kind that begged for stillness. He was picking up scattered socks, folding sweatshirts, when a book tumbled off the edge of shelf. The Little Prince. Ava's name was scribbled on the inside cover in purple marker. But as he picked it up, a small envelope slipped out and drifted to the floor like a leaf falling out of season. He froze. The envelope was yellowed, slightly curled at the corners, sealed, but not labeled for mailing. Instead, in handwriting he hadn't seen in years, was written, "For Elon, if I'm gone before you understand." G. His breath hitched. He didn't move at first, just stared. The silence in the room grew thick, like the air itself understood what was about to unfold. Slowly, reverently, he knelt down and picked it up, hands already trembling. He sat on the edge of Ava's bed, held the letter for a long moment, then peeled the flap open. The paper inside was a soft ivory, her handwriting unmistakable, loopy and slanted, more emotion than precision. His eyes moved slowly across the page. "Dear Elon, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to tell you everything I should have. Or maybe I did, and you weren't ready to hear it. I'm not writing this as your ex-wife. I'm writing this as the only other person who's ever loved Ava the way you do. I know you love her. I never doubted that. Not even when you missed her recital, or her 7th birthday dinner, or when you called from Tokyo to say you'd be late, again. Love isn't always loud, but it has to be present. And you, Elon, you were brilliant. You still are. You dreamed in orbits. You built futures. But while you were charting the stars, our daughter was learning how to be a person. And she didn't need a visionary. She needed you. Not Elon Musk the innovator. Just Elon the dad. The one who could braid a braid badly. Who could sit through the same bedtime story 100 times. Who could cry when she cried, even if he didn't understand why. You don't get another childhood with her. You don't get to hit reset. But you do get to show her what love looks like now. Not from a podium, not from orbit, from the ground. She doesn't care how many rockets you build. She cares if you remember how she likes her toast. She doesn't want to be your legacy. She wants to be your girl. So if I'm gone and this letter finds you, choose her. Even when it's hard. Even when you feel like a failure. Even when the gravity of the world pulls you away. Choose her again and again. Because someday she'll grow up, and the one thing she'll remember more than the genius of her father is whether he made time to listen. Don't be brilliant at the cost of being there. All my love, Justine. Elon didn't cry at first. He just sat there reading and rereading, letting the words crawl into places inside him he didn't know still hurt. The letter felt like a whisper from another world, one he'd once belonged to but left behind without saying goodbye. His hands trembled. He thought of all the times he had dismissed emotion as weakness. The times he'd told himself that purpose was more important than presence. That Mars would justify all the sacrifices. That legacy would be enough. And now, Justine's voice cut through all of it. Ava doesn't want to be your legacy. She just wanted her dad. The realization hit him not like a lightning bolt, but like quiet rain, steady, relentless, soaking everything. He stood, clutching the letter, and walked slowly to the living room. The house felt different now, like the walls had shifted, like the silence knew what had happened before he did. He placed the letter inside the small wooden box on the shelf, Ava's shoebox of secrets. But before he closed it, he added a note of his own, a single line, "I choose you," again and again. He closed the lid. That night, when Ava returned, she found him sitting on the floor in her room. No phone, no laptop, just a simple game of checkers between them. "Want to play?" he asked. She looked down at the board, then at him. "Are you okay?" He nodded. "I will be, especially if you go easy on me." She sat grinning. No promises. They played until midnight. He lost every game, and he'd never felt more victorious. There were no cameras, no launch pads, no algorithms humming beneath his feet. Just grass, sun, and the creak of an old swing. Elon Musk sat on a park bench wearing jeans, a soft hoodie, and a ball cap pulled low. Beside him, Ava kicked off her shoes and ran barefoot toward a patch of dandelions, her curls bouncing with every step. It was Saturday. They had agreed. No tech, no business, no Mars. Just sandwiches in paper bags and Ava's favorite book of riddles, already well worn in the backpack, resting by Elon's feet. Parents wandered with strollers. Dogs chased frisbees. Somewhere a group of teenagers played a half-serious game of soccer. It was the kind of day that reminded Elon Earth wasn't something to escape. It was something to cherish. He leaned back on the bench, eyes squinting at the sunlight, when a man approached hesitantly. "Mr. Musk." Elon turned. The man wore a button-down shirt, rolled sleeves, and the kind of nervous smile reporters wore when they were off duty, but still hopeful. "I'm sorry to intrude," the man said. "My name's Caleb Yoon, freelance journalist. I wasn't expecting to see you here. I wondered if I could ask one question. Off the record. Elon looked at him, then over at Ava, who had now stopped by a large oak tree, inspecting an anthill like it was a lunar colony. He nodded. Sure. One question. Caleb pulled out a small notepad, but didn't open it. After everything, he said, the rocket speech, the heart project, what changed? Elon thought for a moment, staring at the ground, the texture of gravel beneath his shoes. I did, he said finally. I changed. Caleb was about to follow up when Ava returned, holding something behind her back and smiling like she had just solved a mystery. Dad, she said, guess what I found? A worm disguised as a senator. Nope. She pulled out a 4-leaf clover. Luck. Elon smiled and took it delicately. Then we're rich. Caleb laughed, surprised. Miss Musk, I'm Caleb. I was just asking your dad about change. Ava tilted her head. The money kind or the people kind? The people kind, Caleb said, intrigued. She sat beside her father, her knees dusty, twirling the clover between her fingers. Well, she said, I think change happens when someone realizes they've been measuring things wrong. Caleb raised an eyebrow. Measuring how? Like if you spend all your time counting how many things you've built, or how far your rocket went, or how many people follow you, you might forget to count the seconds you spent just being there, with someone, sharing something. She shrugged, looking at her dad. Papa used to count billions. Now he counts seconds shared. That's how I know he changed. The reporter froze, pen hovering. Elon didn't say a word. He just looked at Ava, heart full in the quietest way. Caleb recovered and asked gently, can I quote you on that? Ava thought for a moment, then smiled. Sure, but write it the way I said it. Not fancy. He did. Within hours of returning home, Caleb posted the quote with a photo he'd taken from a respectful distance of father and daughter on a bench under a tree, nothing posed, nothing polished. The caption read, Papa used to count billions. Now he counts seconds shared. Ava Musk, age 10. It was shared 7 million times within 48 hours. Influencers embroidered it on canvas. Teachers wrote it in chalk on school blackboards. Therapists taped it to walls. It was printed on mugs and sticky notes and gift cards. More than one CEO printed it on the inside cover of their notebooks. And Elon, he printed it on a plaque. It now sat in the center of the Heart Lab's entrance, engraved in soft metal. Seconds shared matter more. Ava Musk, he didn't give interviews about it. He didn't clarify or expand. For once, he let the words speak, because they weren't his. They were hers. Back at home, Ava was unimpressed by the attention. They keep tagging me in videos, she said, scrolling through her tablet. Someone made a dance out of my sentence. Is it good? It's okay, she grinned. I like the goat that tried to do it better. Elon laughed. Goats are relentless. That evening, as the sun dipped low and long shadows stretched across the living room, Elon sat cross-legged on the floor, building a miniature rocket out of Legos with Ava. You know, he said, carefully attaching a wing, people are going to remember what you said longer than they remember the rocket's name. Ava looked up. Really? He nodded. Because you told the truth. And truth lands harder than any engine I've ever designed. She leaned over and placed a small astronaut figure in the rocket's cockpit. Then next time you go to Mars, she said, just bring this guy. I think Earth still needs you. Elon nodded slowly. I'm not leaving Earth for a while. She smiled. Good. Then after a pause, she asked, can I ask you something weird? Always. What's your favorite second we ever shared? He thought for a long moment. Then he said, this one. And they kept building, side by side, no cameras, no claps, just seconds quietly stacking, one memory at a time. The announcement wasn't made with a bang. No viral teaser. No countdown timer. No dramatic montage backed by cinematic music. It came in the form of a single tweet. Taking a sabbatical. 1 year. Just me and my daughter. Back soon. Or not. Ing. The world cracked. Twitter combusted. Financial markets stuttered. News anchors blinked into their cameras as if the teleprompters had just confessed something scandalous. Elon Musk has temporarily stepped down. It wasn't a leak. It wasn't forced. It wasn't a burnout admission wrapped in PR gloss. It was deliberate, simple, final. Elon Musk had decided to stop, and no one knew how to process it. Within 30 minutes, Tesla stock dropped 17%. Within 2 hours, SpaceX forums exploded with theories. Was he sick? Planning a permanent exit? Launching a private civilization on some unregistered island? Even Marvin, the household AI, left a passive-aggressive sticky note on the fridge. If you're going to renounce capitalism for hugs, please give at least a 48-hour notice. But Elon didn't respond. He was busy, because while the world searched for meaning, he and Ava were already deep into their new mission, Project Drift. It was what Ava called it, something soft, unpolished, free from branding. A year of unstructured, unscheduled life. Not a vacation, not early retirement, just being. They made a rule. No conferences, no meetings, no Mars, only micro-adventures. They spent the first week making a map of things they'd never done. Nothing spectacular. No top 10 destinations. Just a bucket list of ordinary miracles. Sleep under an actual tree. Learn how to make pasta from scratch. Rescue a kitten. Name it something absurd. Eat breakfast at midnight. Build a kite. Lose it on purpose. Apologize to people who needed to hear it. They started with the tree. One Saturday night, they pitched a tent under the oak in their backyard and lay side by side, faces pointed toward the stars. Elon, surprisingly, didn't point out constellations. He just listened as Eva talked about her favorite dreams. She told him about a recurring one where they ran through an endless bookstore with hallways made of words and staircases that turned into waterfalls. Elon scribbled it in a notebook and later added it to a folder titled, "Ava Says the Best Stuff." Meanwhile, the stock recovered. Not just recovered, surged. Because when Elon stepped back, the people he had mentored stepped forward. Quiet engineers with big hearts and bigger minds began running operations with less stress and more stability. Innovations didn't stall. They expanded. And the public began to ask a different question. If Elon Musk can pause, why can't I? People took breaks. CEOs scheduled leave. Startups implemented mindful Mondays. School districts created stillness hours where students could just breathe. A movement started not about abandoning ambition, but about realigning it. Meanwhile, Elon and Ava continued to drift. They went to the desert and tried painting landscapes. Ava's looked like cotton candy melted into a canyon. Elon's looked like a sad potato with wings. They laughed until they couldn't breathe. They visited Ava's old school without warning. She gave an impromptu talk titled, "Why Being Busy Isn't the Same as Being Alive." The students gave her standing ovation. Elon cried quietly behind his sunglasses. They baked terrible cookies. They got sunburned building a fort out of pool noodles. They spent an entire day asking strangers in a park what their favorite smell was. Answer: fresh tennis balls, rain on pavement, and someone else's shampoo. And yet, despite the freedom, Elon still felt strange. Like something in him was still adjusting to not being needed at the scale he was used to. Late one night, after Ava had fallen asleep mid-monologue about how clouds were basically skybred, he wandered into the Heart Lab alone. He didn't touch anything. He just walked and realized that he'd spent his whole life building futures when what he needed was to inhabit one. The next morning, he made his first official public appearance in months on a live stream from inside the Heart Center, holding a mug that said, "No, I'm not inventing anything right now." He spoke for 5 minutes. No slides, no charts, just this. "I used to think that legacy was something you launch. I was wrong. Legacy is what happens when you stay." The clip was shared across the globe. At least a dozen world leaders quoted it within the week. But Ava? She simply said that was cool and asked if he wanted to build a blanket fort out of couch cushions next. He did. And later that evening, Elon wrote one more tweet. "Project Drift is working. Turns out stillness is its own kind of propulsion. That night, tucked in a fort that smelled of popcorn and socks, Ava whispered, "Dad, yeah, you know what I'm going to tell people when I grow up?" "What?" "That I once paused the busiest man in the world." Elon laughed. "No," he said, "you didn't pause me." She frowned. "No, you rewrote me." And she smiled because deep down she already knew. Years had passed. The house still stood, but was different now. Less digital, more alive. The echo of startup alarms and breaking news alerts had been replaced by the gentle hum of garden wind chimes and the occasional bark of an elderly Labrador named Nebula, who now ruled the patio with slow dignity. Inside, the kitchen still had that soft golden light Elon always loved, especially in the early hours, when the world hadn't quite started and the coffee was still quietly heroic. He stood at the window, now older, grayer at the temples, his posture less tense, his energy more grounded. A few faint lines traced the edges of his eyes, carved not by stress, but by laughter and wind and all the seconds he once forgot to count. Behind him, footsteps. He didn't turn. He just smiled. "Morning," he said. "Morning, Dad," Ava replied. She was older now, no longer a child, but not fully lost to adulthood either. 17. Hair still wild, eyes still a storm of hazel and curiosity. But her shoulders carried something new, intention. She poured herself tea the way she'd learned from Elon, slightly too hot, never stirred. "You ready?" she asked, sitting at the kitchen island. Elon looked at her through his reflection in the window. "For what?" She tilted her head, like she used to do when she was 5 and trying to read him. Then, smiling, she asked, "So, Dad, what's your next rocket?" He froze for a moment, not from surprise, but from recognition. The question, the one that had once unraveled him. But this time, it wasn't weighted with confusion or sadness. This time, it sparkled with warmth, with invitation. He turned toward her and answered without hesitation. "You." Ava blinked. "You're my next rocket," he continued, walking to the counter and handing her a folded blueprint. "The one that matters more than any I've ever built." She unfolded it, and inside was no schematic, no thrust diagrams or fuel codes, just a letter, handwritten. Mission design, Ava Musk. Launch date, whenever you're ready. Altitude, as far as your soul wants to fly. Objective, lead with empathy. Question everything. Stay curious. Notes, if you ever get lost, follow the stars inside you. Love, your first engineer, Dad. Ava smiled, eyes misting but unbroken. "I don't know where I'll land," she whispered. "That's the point," Elon replied. "You're not meant to land. You're meant to orbit, to stretch gravity, to redefine it." The truth was, Ava had already begun. She had been selected quietly, without fanfare, to head a joint initiative between the Heart Project and the United Nations. A global coalition aimed at integrating emotional intelligence into the future of scientific exploration. Mars missions, deep-sea innovation, Antarctic listening posts. She'd insisted every crew receive empathy training, real-time communication therapy tools, and her own invention, feeling translators to help decode cross-cultural emotional expression. She wasn't replacing Elon. She was transcending him. At the official announcement, when asked what drove her philosophy, Ava answered simply, "My father once built machines to break gravity." Then I asked him a question, and he learned that some things fly only when you feel them first. The room had gone quiet, just like the first time. Later that night, back home, Elon and Ava sat under the tree they'd once camped beneath when she was 10. Now it was taller. So was she. They ate spicy noodles from paper bowls, Ava's favorite. "You nervous?" Elon asked. She nodded. "But it's the good kind." "Still dreaming about sky bookstores?" "Always." He looked at her, then up at the sky. No longer something to conquer, but something to reflect. "I used to think I was building the future," he said. "And turns out, I was just building the launch pad." Ava leaned her head on his shoulder. And they sat like that for a long time, two rockets in different stages of flight, one in descent, full of stories, the other trembling with potential. The second question had been asked. The answer had changed everything. And for the first time in human history, a new generation of explorers would venture into the unknown, not just with equations in hand, but with hearts open. Because one little girl once asked a question, and the world eventually listened. Now it's your turn. Tell us, what city are you watching from? And more importantly, what part of this story moved you most? Drop your answer in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and connect with you, wherever you are in the world.